Okay, good. And now, let's see. Essentially, we've completely covered all of linear equations. Yes, I'm repeating myself because I just officially started filming, so I have to. But now we want to look at applications. But the one difference between the applications that maybe you've done before and the applications we're going to do now, how many of you know the interest formula? Simple interest. Anyone? I equals, you have seen this before,
X plus 0 or times 1.
I equals PRT. We've seen that before, right? Interest equals principal times rate times time. Yes? Okay, yes. At some point in your life you have, because it's a pretty common formula. How many people know the distance formula? For like the distance in terms of physics. You do know it because you're alive. And again, I say that somewhat sarcastically, but it's actually completely true. I drove here this morning. I got up at 4:45. Very early. I used to think getting up at 5:20 was early to come here. This morning I had to get up at 4:45. That's even earlier. It's not fun. But I drove here from Garner by way of NC State. It's a long drive. If I drove 70 miles per hour for 2 hours, how far did I drive? There you go. You can do the distance formula even if you don't know the distance formula because you're alive and you've done it your whole life, right? The actual formula written out, distance equals rate times time. You've seen this before, right? I will point, some people actually say D equals ST. Instead of rate, they say speed. I don't know, I learned that D equals RT. If you've seen it before as D equals ST, that's fine. I prefer D equals RT and that's how I'll write it. But the point is, all of you could solve problems with these equations, right? If I told you I drove 50 miles per hour for 3 hours, how long would it take you to solve the problem? Yeah, as long as it took you to enter the buttons on your calculator or do the math on yourself. If I told you I invested $1,000 at 5% interest for 3 years, how much interest do I get? How long would it take you? Not very long at all. You just put the numbers in there and hit enter, right? Which means those problems are trivial and boring and not worth doing. So that's not what we're going to do. Essentially, we're going to take these equations, which you already know, these formulas, and do more complex problems where those formulas just kind of get worked into whatever we're solving. Okay? It sounds a little complicated. A little bit of practice is not a big deal. So, say we do this. I invest $100,000 into 2 accounts. The first gives 11% interest. The second gives 8% interest. After 1 year, I have, let's see if I can do the math really quickly. $9,800 in interest. How much did I invest in each account? Okay? I invest $100,000 into 2 accounts. The first gives 11% interest, the second gives 8% interest. After 1 year, I have $9,800 in interest. How much did I invest in each account? So we recognize that it is an interest problem, correct? But it's not just I equals PRT, plug in 3 numbers and enter on your calculator and you're done. So how do we use the interest formula in some way to solve this? Any ideas? Okay, as far as it goes, there's really 3 steps to each problem, to each application. 1, figure out your variable or variables. 2, figure out your equation. 3, do the algebra, which is actually the easy part because you already know how to do the algebra, and get an answer. And I suppose part 4 would be checking your answer, but all of you guys are going to do that anyway, so I don't even have to mention that, right? Yes, good, there we go. Okay, so first off, variables. What am I looking for? How many quantities am I looking for?
2.
2. In this case, I want to know the amount of money I invested in the first account and the amount of money I invested in the second account. As far as it goes, there are different ways to set this up. You can solve this with 1 variable or with 2. Mathematically speaking, for every variable you create, you need another equation. Meaning, if I have 1 variable, I need 1 equation to solve. If I have 2 variables, I need to create 2 equations and solve those simultaneously. That's generally harder because, 2 equations is harder than 1. So you can solve this with 2. Again, if you've ever done this before and solved it with 2 variables and 2 equations, and you know how to do it, that's fine, do it, I don't care. I'm going to solve them with 1 equation just because it's easier and I think it works better. Okay? If you're going to solve it with just 1 variable, you need to find a way to write all your quantities in terms of 1 variable. There's kind of a standard trick to this. It can be a little weird the first time you see it, but there's kind of a standard trick to it. So, we'll say x equals the amount in the first account, which is the 11% account. So it's the amount in the 11% account. Now, if I invest X amount of dollars in the first account, how much do I invest in the second account? No, I want to do it with 1 variable. Huh? Yeah. Okay, there is 1 trick to this. If you are not sure how to write your variables, plug in numbers. Understand how to do it by plugging in numbers and then replace numbers with letters. What I mean is, if I invest $50,000 in the first account, how much did I invest in the second? 50. How'd you get that? $100,000 total. If I invest $40,000 in the first account, how much did I invest in the second?
650.
So what are you doing? You take the total amount of money invested, subtract off the amount in the first account, and that tells you the amount in the second account, right? I invested X amount of dollars in the first account. How much did I invest in the second? 100,000 minus X. Subtraction has to flip, right? So the second account is 100,000 minus X. That's the 8% account. Now you have your variables. Next step is, we'll actually writing an equation. How do we do that? Well, let's see. Generally speaking, if you're given numbers in a problem, you're probably going to use them, especially in this class. And we haven't used the 9800 yet, so find a way to write that. What does the 9800 represent?
The total interest.
Total interest. How do I get interest? In the context of this problem, how do I get interest?
With the simple interest formula.
Huh? Yeah, I get interest from both accounts, right? So, if $9,800 is my total interest, where does my interest come from? The interest from the first account and the interest from the second account. What's the interest from the first account? Well, it's just a simple interest formula. I equals PRT. So it's the principal from the first account, which is X, times the rate from the first account, 11%. All of you know that has to be entered as a decimal, right? So that's 0.11x. Times time. Time is just 1 year. It's 1, so just drop it out. And one thing I would point out, as far as this goes, as you're solving problems for homework and all of that, if time is not given in the problem, which a lot of times it won't be, assume it's 1 and just drop it out of the problem. It doesn't matter. If you're not explicitly told 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, make time 1, be done with it, it just goes away. That's the interest from the first account. Then I need the interest from the second account. That's the principal. 100,000 minus X, make sure it's in parentheses, times the rate, 8%. I'm going to put it in front, you can put it in back, it doesn't matter. Times time, which is again a year. And now you have interest from the first account plus interest from the second account equals total interest. That makes sense. Now do the third step, algebra, solve it all out. All of you can do that, right? Yes, good. Just to make sure, let's see. Distribute first, so 0.11x plus 0.08 times 100,000 is 8% of 100,000, which is 8,000. Minus 0.08 times negative x is negative 0.08x equals 9,800. Combine like terms. 0.11x minus 0.08x is 0.03x plus 8,000 equals 9,800. Subtract the 8,000 over, you get 0.03x equals 1,800. Divide the 0.03. All of you have calculators, so you can do that, but that's the same as 3 100ths. 3 cancels with the 18 and leaves a 6. These two zeros cancel with, oh no, sorry, that goes on top. So these two zeros go up there, and you should get x equals 60,000. You don't have to write it this way. I did because I don't have a calculator, so I have to write it as a fraction and solve it all out. Throw it into your calculator. 1,800 divided by 0.03 should give you 60,000. Am I done? No? Why?
You have to solve for the problem.
Huh?
You have to solve for
This is the amount of money in the first account, right? The 11% account. I need to know the amount of money in the other account too. When you're solving these problems, sometimes you're solving for one variable, sometimes you're solving for 2 or 3. Make sure you actually solve the problem you asked. It kind of sucked to do all this work, get it all right, and then get the problem wrong because it asked for both quantities and you only gave me one. So make sure you actually answer the question you're asked. In this case, let's see, if there's 60,000 in the first account, how much is there in the second? 40,000, because they have to add up to 100,000. Again, the last step is to check it to make sure. 11% of 60,000 is 6,600. 8% of 40,000 is 3,200. And if you add those together, you get 9,800, which is the amount of interest you should get. So you're good to go. Make sense? Pretty easy? Create your variables. If you're looking for more than one quantity, find a way to write all the quantities in terms of one variable. Create an equation, which should be logical and make sense. And then the last step, which is the easy step, do the algebra, hit enter on your calculator, and you're good to go, right? Okay, good. Then, this marker is broken. One more problem. And then we're going to move on to something else. Suppose I have this. Let's see. And this one will deliberately be easy and won't take long. There's a point to it. On Monday, I picked 3 times as many apples as I did on Tuesday. I picked 48 total. How many did I pick each day? I'm willing to bet all of you, even you online, can solve this problem pretty much the moment you look at it. That's not the point. There is a point to this, so we're going to work it all out briefly. Okay, and let's see. I'm going to pause the video right now and restart it because we're almost out of time.